When we think of a relationship between Isabella de Castilla and Ferdinando d'Aragon, we have to consider that this type of connection, this type of marriage between these two kings develop a specific type of the King of Spain. This is really interesting because in this sense the Kingdom of Spain, it was a relationship between the Kingdom of Castile and the Kingdom of Aragon, and at the same time without the marriage between these two type of kings we couldn't explain about the birth of the Kingdom of Spain. This is interesting because therefore when we think about the unification of these two type of kingdoms, we have also to consider that these kingdoms were really important in relation with the idea of Reconquista of Spain that happened in the end of the 15th century. This is really interesting because, for example, Isabella de Castilla and Ferdinando d'Aragon were Catholic Catholic kings that wanted to maintain a specific type of Catholic idea of the sovereign. Moreover, we know that the Reconquista, therefore the assaults, but in particular the conquest of the territories of the Muslims terminated in the end of the 5th century AD, in this sense in particular in the 1492, the same year when there was the discovery of the New World as the America. This is interesting because if we have to consider the connection between Castile and Aragon, we have to admit that these two type of kingdoms develop the idea of independence and the idea of different type of state. In fact, we cannot explain the Spain as a national state, because it was true that there was an unification, but at the same time the independence between Castile and Aragon, it was maintained. At the same time, when Columbus arrived in front of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, proposed to them the idea to arrive to rediscover the Asia from the Atlantic Ocean. At the beginning, we know that Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand didn't consider truly this type of purpose, in particular because after the Reconquista that happened in the first days of the end of the 50th century, therefore in the first days of the 1492, Spain had spent a lot of monies to develop this type of Reconquista, and therefore Isabella and Ferdinand didn't consider this type of purpose technically a good type of purpose in relation with economics. However, there is also the other type of part of the argument. In fact, after this, we know that if, according to Isabel and Ferdinand, but in particular to Isabel, if the words of Columbus were right, therefore the explanation of Columbus that with the roots between the Spain and the other part of the world, in particular through the Atlantic Ocean, could arrive in the Asia to, in this sense, the ex-East Roman Empire. In this sense, according to Isabel, this type of movement could be important, in particular to counterattack the Muslims that had conquered Constantinople in 1453. Therefore, according to Isabel in particular, but also with Ferdinand, it was really important to develop a specific type of movement against the Muslims in relation with the purpose of Columbus, to try to develop a specific type of counterattack after the Reconquista. Therefore, the main topic, the main argument is that Spain succeeded in his type of Reconquista after the period of the Crusades in the Holy Land, and a new type of crusade. It was the type of crusade that Spain developed against the Muslims in Spain, and in this sense Spain had his success. However, there is the other type of argument, and therefore the second argument, therefore the idea that now Spain wanted to move, if Columbus had right, to the oceans, to the Atlantic Ocean, to develop a specific type of counterattack against the Muslims that, in particular the Turkish Ottoman that had conquered Constantinople in the middle of 15th century AD. To develop or redevelop a specific type of crusade and rethink the idea of crusade in this sense. However, when Columbus arrived, Columbus, we know that didn't arrive in Asia because he discovered a new world. In particular, he knew when in 1492 arrived in America. In particular, we know that he considered this type of land Asia, but with time he understood that this type of land he wasn't the Asia, but he was technically a new type of land that the European didn't know that it was exist. And in this sense, we know also that there was a new type of debate in relation with the fact that a new type of populations were discovered. In particular, these populations, we know these populations was the Native Americans, in particular as the European called them the Indios. In this sense, the successor of Isabel of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, in this sense Carlo V, supported in relation with the fact that the Kingdom of Spain sent to the New World different type of religious men, in particular Dominicians. We know that Dominicians, the Franciscans, develop a specific new type of debate in relation with the Native Americans and their rights, in relation with the fact that the religious men went to the New World to support the idea of the relationship and the deal between the Pope, in particular Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, in relation with the Kingdom of Spain, and this was the deal. The Pope had recognized the land of the New World as the land of Spain if Spain had supported his type of Catholic idea. Therefore, Spain had to send his missionaries, and if he had to do this, the Catholic Church, in particular the Pope, could be recognized the territories of the New World as the territories of the Kingdom of Spain. In this sense, we know that therefore some missionaries began to develop this question: why I have to do this? Because the idea of Catholic had to be free, and therefore the idea of influence to these Native Americans couldn't be imposed to them. But therefore there is a specific type of opposition between the mission of a missionary and the idea of state in this sense. And there was an important debate also between the natives and the Catholic Church that some missionaries, for example Las Casas, developed to promote. Began to promote. Bye.